Do you struggle and get anxious when you have to take tests? You're not alone. Stay tuned. That's what's up next. Hi, my name is Natasha Daniels. I'm a therapist and I create videos to help people with anxiety or OCD. And today I want to talk to you about one of the most common anxiety struggles, and that is test taking. Do you struggle with that? It's a really common struggle because it can be really anxiety producing to sit there with a piece of paper or be on a computer and have to take something that's timed, that's surrounded by other people, and that you're going to get a grade for. But the good news is there are things that you can do to reduce your anxiety. So the first step is ask yourself, what is causing that anxiety? Because, believe it or not, or maybe it's obvious, everybody who gets test anxiety has test anxiety for different reasons. Just because you have test anxiety doesn't mean you're going to be the same as me. So what is the scariest part about taking a test? What is the hardest part about taking a test? What are you afraid will happen if you do poorly on the test? Those are the three questions you really want to hone in on. Because just because you have this anxiety doesn't mean that you really understand why you're having it to begin with. So we have to sometimes dive deeper to figure out what's driving that. And it's different for each person. So let's go over a couple of them. Some people are worried that if they don't do well on this test, it's going to ruin their grade or ruin their career. They're not going to graduate. They're going to have a domino effect. If I don't do well on this test, boop, 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 boop. And the more important the test, the bigger the worry, right? Because it's a lot of times teachers will even drill in that message. This is really important. You need to take this seriously. They're not talking to you. They're talking to the people that don't care and that aren't taking it seriously. You're taking it too seriously. So that's the first core fear that I see with people who are anxious about taking tests. The second one is they're worried about disappointing other people. So maybe they worry that their parent is going to be disappointed or angry with them if they don't do well on a test. Some people have peer pressure. They're worried that if they don't do well, other people are going to look at them and think, oh, I thought you were the smart one, but you're not that smart. I guess, what we thought of you isn't true. And so their identity is wrapped into getting good grades and doing well on tests. Some people really struggle with tests. They might have processing issues or just don't do well under the pressure. And so it becomes this reality that I get anxious when I do tests because I don't test well. And because I'm anxious when I'm testing, my scores don't come out well. And the reality and the worries kind of get mixed together. And so you might be even more anxious. That's common too. So what can you do about those things? Well, you want to first dive into the core fear. So if you're worried about being perfectionistic and having to get perfect scores on everything, you want to deal with perfectionism on a bigger level. And I do have a video on perfectionism here that you can watch. We want to talk about if we mess up, does it matter? Right? Like my dog's barking right now and she's totally ruining my video. I could stop and re-record this, but does it really matter, right? No, I'm going to let it go. I'm going to leave it in because I'm going to embrace imperfectionism. That's kind of what we want to do, is we don't want one bad grade. Is that going to really create such a ripple effect that your entire life is ruined? No matter how important a test is, not one test can completely ruin your life. You always have your health. You always have people you love. There's all these other things. So no matter how critical it is, put it in perspective, right? Is it going to literally destroy everything? No. Even important tests aren't going to destroy the entire foundation of your life. So sometimes that's a mindset shift of reframing the importance of this test. Am I putting too much importance on this? Even, when you're an adult and you're doing like licensure tests or things that are going to impact your career, even that, put that into perspective, right? Is that going to crumble my entire existence? No. Would it be frustrating? Yes. But is it going to crumble my entire existence? No. So do I need to take these things a little bit lighter? Probably. For those of you that are worried about disappointing other people, then we have to work on relationships. I have to find my goals versus the goals of other people. For those of you that are wrapped in your identity of being the smart one and you're worried that your friends are going to find out that you didn't do well on a test, Do we want friends that are only going to like us because we're the smart one or because we get good scores? Do we have other values? Maybe we need to work on that. So for those of you that struggle because you do have processing issues and taking a test is hard, that can be something that we want to touch on too. Can you get accommodations where you're getting tested? If the noise is too overwhelming, can you test in a separate area? There are a lot of places where you can get accommodations for your struggles. If you can't, or that embarrasses you, can you put earplugs in your ears or vibes, which are like noise filtering earplugs, or hoops, I think they're called. That's another brand that drown out the sound so that you can just focus on what you're doing. If you get distracted, I know for me, I was an anxious test taker, and when I was sitting next to other people who were finishing before me or were making noises, I was easily distracted. And I was like, oh gosh, they're done. Or they flipped the page and I haven't even finished the first page. What's happening? Does that happen to you? So I might pick a seat that is away from other people. Or I might sit up in the front so I'm not seeing so many people getting up as much as just maybe the person next to me. So if you are able to choose your seat, that can be helpful too. Again, though, you can sometimes get accommodations and you can say, I get overwhelmed when I see other people getting up. Is there a way I can take the test in a separate space? Sometimes they'll accommodate that. Sometimes you have to fight for it, but sometimes they'll accommodate that. When you are taking a test, it's a whole mindset shift, because when I was taking tests, I would get into my head and I would tune into all the sounds around me. So first I'd be like, oh gosh, I'm getting so distracted. And then I would look and I'd get overwhelmed by how many questions there are. Oh my gosh, there's 30 questions. I'm never going to get through this. Or what if that one was wrong? Or as I'm going through it, I'll be like, oh gosh, I don't know that answer. I have to go back. And so I developed, because I had to survive, I had to get into graduate school, I had to get through graduate school, I developed a way of hyper-focusing just in the moment, just the one question in front of me. And if I didn't know it really well, I would skip it and I would just keep going. And this, everyone has a different style of how they cope, but this is how I coped. I would skip it, because what I found is when I got stuck on ones that I didn't know and I really sat there for a while, my anxiety started to rev up and I kept thinking, oh my gosh, and I would waste time and my confidence would start to decline. And so instead, I'd go through the whole test and I would answer the ones that I knew really, really well. Right? I'd knock those out. Or the ones that I was pretty sure of, and I'd knock those out. And then I'd go back to the ones that were harder, because I didn't lose as much time. And I was also less anxious, because I was like, okay, I just did 75% of this test and I knew a lot of it. And so now I'm not looking at the clock and being like, oh my gosh, I haven't even moved past the first page. I already have done the bulk of it. And then I go back and I start to do the ones that I struggled with a little bit. And then my feeling of overwhelm isn't going to ruin or taint all the other ones that I would have easily have gotten because I was blinded by anxiety. It's a real mind game, I think, when we're taking tests, to not overwhelm ourselves, to not build up the anxiety. Sometimes when it's timed, there's also that anxiety of I'm gonna not be able to beat the clock. So practicing at home could be helpful if you get caught up into the time, where you get caught up in running out of time. There's a lot of free tests that you can get online that you can just take to practice the idea of finishing a test and being timed for it. Or maybe you can get someone that you like that can help you to give you a test and give you an artificial amount of time, so you get used to that pressure of just going through the ones that you know and skipping the ones you don't, and then going back to the ones that you don't know and working on those. I know it is hard, but when you practice these things and you don't avoid test taking, the easier it gets. And sometimes when I'm like, I don't care anymore, this is causing me so much stress, and I let go and I'm just like, I'm just going to be in the moment, I do better. It's a daily practice. It's a test practice. It's an ongoing practice, but in time, you can definitely get there. I hope that you find the sparkle in everything you do, and I'll talk to you again next Thursday. Take care.